r/relationship_advice. Mom tried to blackmail me. Family wants forgiveness. #chunk1. I'm sitting in my lawyer's office, staring at my phone, watching the notification counter tick up like some kind of sick game show. 17 missed calls. 23 text messages. 11 voicemails, mostly from numbers I haven't heard from in months. All in the last 2 hours. Don't look at them, Sarah Chen, my attorney, says from across the mahogany desk. She's a thin woman in her 50s with reading glasses on a chain and an expression that suggests she's seen this exact scenario play out 100 times before. Maybe she has. I know it's hard, but every reaction you have right now is emotional, not strategic. I lock my phone and set it face down on the desk. She's right, but that doesn't make it easier. 3 days ago, my mother sent an email to my boss. 3 days before that, she'd sent a similar email to David. 3 days before that, everything had still been normal, or as normal as things get when you're carrying around the weight of childhood trauma that you've been actively processing in therapy for the past 8 months. I'm Marcus Chen, no relation to my lawyer, though we joked about it when I first called her office. 28 years old. Senior software engineer at Meridian Tech engaged, or at least, I was engaged, until last Wednesday morning when my fiancé called me at work, his voice shaking, asking if there was anything I'd like to explain about my mental instability and concerning psychological patterns. Walk me through it again, Sarah says, pulling out a legal pad. But this time, start from the beginning. Not from when she sent the emails. From when you first discovered what she'd done. I nod, even though I've already told her this story twice. But I understand. Lawyers need consistency. They need to know where the cracks might appear under cross-examination. The beginning feels like ancient history now, even though it was only 3 weeks ago. I'd been in therapy with Dr. Morrison for about 6 months at that point. Nothing dramatic brought me to her door, no acute crisis or rock-bottom moment. Just the slow accumulation of realizations that the way my mother had treated me throughout my childhood wasn't normal, and that it was affecting how I moved through the world as an adult. How I handled conflict. How I trusted people. How I let myself be treated in relationships. Childhood stuff. Boring, common, the kind of thing half of America pays good money to process on a weekly basis. My mom had always been intense. Growing up, she'd been the kind of parent who needed constant reassurance that she was doing well as a mother, which was weird, because we were the children. We were supposed to be seeking reassurance from her, not the other way around. She'd confide in me about her marriage problems, her financial anxieties, her friendship drama. By age 12, I knew more about my parents' sex life than any kid should. By 16, I was the emotional support for someone who was supposed to be supporting me. The money stuff had always been there too, simmering beneath the surface. Money that disappeared. Money that was suddenly needed urgently. Money that had been borrowed and forgotten about. A few years ago, I'd finally connected the dots, the late-night computer sessions where she'd lock herself in the office, the calls from numbers I didn't recognize at odd hours, the way her mood would swing dramatically between manic highs and crushing lows. The frantic energy followed by the deep silences. Gambling. It had taken me until my mid-20s to understand what I was actually looking at. But I'd set my boundary. A good, healthy, therapist-recommended boundary. I wouldn't be loaning her money anymore. I wouldn't be covering her debts. I wouldn't be her financial safety net. That had gone over fine. By fine, I mean she'd accepted it coldly and we'd gone low contact, seeing each other only at major holidays with the understanding that if she asked for money, I would leave. Then, about 7 months ago, I'd made the decision to move into David's apartment and start building a life with him. I told my mother about the engagement 3 months ago. She'd been icy, but civil. And then, 3 weeks ago, I'd gotten a call from my office building security. Your mother was in the lobby, Sarah prompts gently. What did she want? She said she needed to talk to me, I tell her. Said it was urgent. I came down because, I pause, and Sarah nods. She knows this part already. She knows I came down because no matter how many years of therapy you do, there's still a part of you that responds to your mother's urgent. That's trained into your nervous system at a cellular level. She was angry, I continue. Visibly angry. She said she'd been trying to reach me for weeks, and that I was being cold and cruel by cutting her off. She said David didn't understand what I was really like, that he was being deceived. She said she had something to show me. Sarah waits. She's good at waiting. It's probably the lawyer version of what therapists do. She had her phone out, I say. She played me an audio clip. It was from one of my therapy sessions. Dr. Morrison and I talking about how much my mother had emotionally relied on me as a child. How it had fucked me up. How it made it hard for me to set boundaries in other relationships. My hands are shaking now, and I've already told this story twice. Adrenaline is a weird thing. She said she'd been recording all my sessions. Every time I came home for visits, she had some kind of device in her purse. She said she had hours of material. She said if I didn't give her $50,000 to help with some financial difficulties, she was going to send edited versions of these recordings to my workplace and to David. She said she'd make sure everyone knew I was unstable. That I was a liar. That I was damaged goods. The clinical part of my brain, the engineer part, wants to note how transparently stupid this plan was. Recording therapy sessions is illegal in most states without consent. Threatening to release them as blackmail is federal extortion. The fact that she told me face-to-face, in a building with security cameras, is actually just embarrassingly incompetent. But I'd been too shocked to think about that in the moment. And you refused, Sarah says. I refused, I confirm. I went back upstairs. I called my therapist. Dr. Morrison said I needed to contact the police immediately. But you didn't, Sarah says. It's not a question. She's already read my statement. She knows the timeline. No, I admit. I went home. I told David what happened. He said it sounded like she was bluffing. That there was no way she'd actually follow through, because that would be insane. Sarah makes a note on her pad. He was wrong, I say quietly. Yes, Sarah agrees. He was. My phone buzzes against the desk. Hashtag chunk 2. Don't, Sarah says without looking up. That's probably family. She's right. It almost certainly is. But I reach for it anyway, because some part of me is still hoping, irrationally, stupidly, that one of these messages will be from David. That he's had time to think. That he's realized I'm not the villain in this story. The notification is from my Aunt Patricia. Mom's sister. Asterisk Marcus, your mother is devastated. Whatever happened between you two, family is forever. She says you're destroying her over some misunderstanding. Please call her, asterisk. I set the phone down without responding. Your aunt doesn't know the full story, Sarah observes. It's not quite a question. Nobody knows the full story except David, my therapist, and now you, I say. My mother sent those clips out on Wednesday. Edited ones. Really heavily edited. She took snippets where I was talking about my anxiety, my trust issues, my difficulty with emotional intimacy, and she made it look like I was admitting to things I never said. Things like infidelity. Substance abuse. Financial irresponsibility. Sarah's pen pauses. Did she actually use those words, she asks. No, I say. That's what makes it so effective. She just cut things in a way that implied them. Like, I was talking about why I'd avoided committing to long-term relationships for years, and she edited it so it sounded like I was confessing to cheating on David specifically. She took a conversation about my anxiety medication and cut it so it sounded like I was admitting to drug use. Did your boss have questions? Sarah asks. He suspended me pending an investigation into my psychological fitness for the role, I say. The bitterness in my voice comes through clear as day. Meridian Tech has been pretty aggressive about mental health awareness in recent years, which is good, it's a good thing, but it also means they have to take stuff like this seriously. When someone sends videos of their employee in therapy talking about mental health struggles, they can't just ignore it. So they didn't fire me. They just suspended me. Pending investigation. And your fiancé? Sarah asks carefully. I look away. David watched the clips. He said they seemed pretty bad. He said if they weren't taken out of context, then we had a serious problem. I tried to show him the original recordings. Dr. Morrison gave me authorization to share them with him so he could see what had actually been said versus what my mother had edited. But I pause, trying to find words that don't make me sound like I'm still in denial. He said it was manipulative of me to try to prove my innocence. He said if I was innocent, I wouldn't need to prove it. He said real trust means believing him without evidence. Sarah's expression doesn't change, but I see her make another note. He broke off the engagement on Thursday, I continue. Through text, because apparently we couldn't have that conversation in person. He said he needed to focus on his own mental health and that my issues were too much for him to handle. He said he'd appreciate it if I found a new place to live quickly, because his therapist agreed that a clean break would be best for his healing. You moved out. I moved out on Sunday, I confirm. Got a short-term rental. I have most of my stuff in storage right now. I'm living out of a suitcase in a furnished one-bedroom in Arlington. Sarah sets her pen down and takes off her reading glasses. Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. I nod. Are you having any thoughts of? No, I say immediately. I know what this looks like. I know it looks like I should be having them. Job suspended, engagement over, living in a rental, mother apparently willing to destroy me for $50,000. But no. I'm angry. I'm humiliated. I'm terrified about what happens next. But I'm not. I'm not in that place. I have my therapist. I have my brother, he doesn't believe my mother, he's being supportive. I have a couple of friends from college who checked in. Your brother, Sarah says. You haven't mentioned him. What's his situation? Jeremy's 32. He moved to Portland 5 years ago. He had his own issues with mom, she was different with him, less of the emotional enmeshment, but more of the financial manipulation. He cut contact about 4 years ago. He's been no contact completely. When I called him after everything happened, he was angry at me, actually. Sarah raises an eyebrow. He said I should have seen it coming. That I should have assumed mom was capable of this. He said he's been trying to get me to go no contact with her for years, and now I know why. But he's also been supportive about the legal stuff. He said he'd testify if needed. He said he has records of her trying to manipulate him financially. That could be useful, Sarah says. Now, let's talk about your mother's response to your refusal and her threats being rejected. I laugh. It comes out hollow. She didn't stop, I say. Wednesday, I got a voicemail from her. She said that she tried to be nice, she tried to reason with me, but that I'd left her no choice. She said David deserved to know the real me. She said my boss deserved to know what kind of employee they had. She said she was releasing everything, the full recordings, not even edited, just raw footage of my therapy sessions where I'm discussing deeply personal trauma, to my entire extended family. Did she follow through on that threat? Sarah asks. I don't know yet, I say. But given that I have 17 missed calls and 23 text messages from people I haven't heard from in 6 months, I'm going to guess yes. Sarah reaches for her phone on the desk. Marcus, we need to file the police report today. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Today. And we need to do it before your extended family potentially corrupts the evidence by sharing those files around. I nod. Okay. We're also going to want to talk about the civil suit, she continues. Defamation, invasion of privacy, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Your mother's actions have caused measurable harm to your career and your personal relationships. That's actionable. How long does something like that take? I ask. Sarah pulls her glasses back on. Longer than you'd like. But first things first. We prove she broke the law. Then we worry about making her pay for it. My phone buzzes again. Then again. Then again. This time, I don't reach for it. Hashtag chunk 3. The police station smells like burnt coffee and industrial cleaner. Sarah sits beside me in the small interview room, a folder of documents spread across the metal table in front of us. Detective Morrison, no relation to my therapist, though I had a moment of surreal confusion when he introduced himself, is a woman in her 50s with gray streaking her dark hair and the kind of tired eyes that come from years of hearing people's worst stories. Walk me through the timeline one more time, she says, clicking her pen. Starting from when your mother first made the demand. I've already gone through this with Sarah twice. But I understand the need for precision. I understand that this is the difference between a case and a he said she said. I understand that my mother is counting on my shame and my embarrassment and my tendency to minimize my own pain. 3 weeks ago, I begin. Tuesday afternoon. She called me at work. Said she needed money. $50,000. Said she had some debts she needed to clear up and that I was the only one who could help her. Did she specify the nature of the debts? Morrison asks. No. Not in that first call. But I knew. I've always known. My mother has a gambling problem. It's been a problem for years. She goes to Atlantic City every other weekend. She plays online poker. She's been to Gamblers Anonymous twice that I know of, but she never stays. She always relapses. Morrison makes a note. Did you agree to give her the money? No. I told her I couldn't. That I'd be happy to help her find resources, but that I wasn't going to enable her addiction by giving her $50,000. I was actually pretty firm about it. I told her she needed to tell the family, get professional help, look into debt management options. That must not have gone over well, Morrison observes. She hung up on me, I say. Didn't call back until Thursday morning. That's when she made the threat. I've rehearsed this part in my head so many times that the words come out almost mechanical. But my hands are shaking when I tell her what my mother said. That she had recordings. That she could make sure I lost everything if I didn't cooperate. That she'd been patient with me, she'd given me every opportunity, but that sometimes you have to show your children what happens when they don't respect their parents. Did she say how she obtained the recordings? Morrison asks. Not explicitly. But my therapist's office is in his home. He has a small practice, just him and a part-time receptionist. My mother must have placed a recording device during one of her random drop-bys. She was good at those, would just show up with groceries or takeout, wouldn't call first. Dr. Morrison confirmed that she'd been to his house at least twice in the months before I noticed the recordings were being made. You noticed the recordings? Morrison leans forward. How? I saw a small camera in the corner of the room. Very small. Professional grade. It was hidden behind a picture frame on the bookshelf, but the angle was slightly wrong, and I could see the lens. I asked Dr. Morrison about it immediately. He had no idea. He checked his office that night and found 2 more. A recorder in the plant by the window, and another camera pointed at his chair. Morrison sits back. Your mother is quite thorough. My mother is quite desperate, I say. Or she was. Before this completely backfired. Let's talk about what happened after she made the threat, Morrison says. You refused her. I refused her. I told her what she was doing was illegal, that I wouldn't be paying her, and that if she released any recordings, I'd go to the police and to a lawyer. I thought that would scare her. That she'd back down. But she didn't. I confirm. She waited 2 days. I have no idea why. Maybe she was hoping I'd change my mind. Maybe she was getting the recordings edited. Maybe she just needed time to work up the nerve. But on Wednesday morning, before I even got to work, my boss got an email. He didn't open it until mid-morning. By the time he called me into his office, he'd watched enough of the clips to look at me like I was a threat. Can you describe what the clips contained? Morrison asks. Sarah slides a folder across the table. Inside are printed screenshots from the video files, timestamps, fragments of dialogue, my mother's editing notes that I found later when I downloaded the full files from her email. She's a stupid criminal, in some ways. She used the same password for everything. She documented her own crimes. They were severely edited, I explain, pointing out the timestamps. See here, she took clips from 3 different sessions, all from times when I was discussing my anxiety and my relationship patterns. She removed context. She added her own voiceover in some places, narrating what I supposedly meant. She cut out the parts where my therapist was helping me work through these issues in a healthy way. She made it look like I was confessing to things I'd never admitted to. Morrison studies the documents. And she sent these to your employer. And my fiancé. And apparently, based on the messages I'm getting, to most of my extended family by now. What was your family's response? Morrison asks. I pull out my phone and scroll to the messages I've been unable to ignore. Sarah told me to bring them as evidence. I pull up the thread from my Uncle Michael, my mother's oldest brother. Asterisk, this is disgusting. If these recordings are real, you need to get help before you hurt someone. Your mother is heartbroken, asterisk. Then from my Aunt Karen. Asterisk, I don't know what kind of sick game you're playing, but you're destroying your mother. She loves you. Whatever is in those videos, it's between you and God now, asterisk. And the worst one, from my cousin Jennifer. Asterisk, I used to look up to you. I can't believe you've been lying to all of us. At least your mom had the courage to tell the truth, asterisk. They believe the recordings are authentic, Morrison says. It's not a question. Most of them do. A few, like my brother Jeremy, understood that they'd been edited. But most of them just see their nephew/cousin/son admitting to things in a therapy session and assume it's all true. Why would my mother lie, right? Why would she fake something so serious? Morrison closes the folder. Because she's a desperate woman who committed at least 3 felonies to cover up her debt problem. Recording without consent is a felony in this state. Extortion is a felony. Distribution of private medical information is a felony. So what happens now? I ask. Now, Morrison says, we open a formal investigation. We get warrants for your mother's devices. We interview your therapist. We document the harm to your employment and your personal relationships. And then we present the case to the district attorney. How long will that take? Weeks, Morrison says. Maybe months. Weeks. Months. How am I supposed to rebuild anything in that time? How am I supposed to convince my job that I'm stable enough to return to work when my own family thinks I'm unstable? How am I supposed to trust anyone ever again? One more question, Morrison says. Have you had any contact with your mother since Wednesday? I shake my head. She's called. She's texted. She's tried everything. But no. No contact. Not since she told me what she'd done. Morrison nods, as if satisfied. Keep it that way. Don't answer her calls. Don't respond to messages. Let everything go to voicemail. If she shows up at your residence, call us immediately. Understood. Understood, I say. But as I'm leaving the police station with Sarah, my phone buzzes. A text from a number I don't recognize. Asterisk, this is your mother using Dad's old phone. I need to talk to you. You're making a terrible mistake. Please call me back, asterisk. I show Sarah the message. Block it, she says immediately. And document it. Screenshot it with the timestamp. Evidence of continued contact after you've made it clear you don't want communication. I do as she says. But my hands are still shaking. Hashtag chunk 4. The next 2 weeks are a blur of lawyers, depositions, and the slow, grinding realization that my life has essentially been put on pause while the investigation moves forward at its own glacial pace. My employment lawyer, Patricia Chen, is efficient and ruthless in a way I appreciate. She's already sent a formal letter to my employer demanding they reinstate me pending the outcome of the investigation, citing defamation and tortious interference. My boss, Derek, calls me the day after he receives it. His tone has shifted. He's suddenly very concerned about my well-being, very sorry for the misunderstanding, very interested in getting me back to work as soon as possible. Apparently, the threat of litigation does wonders for corporate empathy. But there's a problem. We'd like to bring you back, Derek says, and I can hear the careful calculation in his voice, but we need to do it carefully. We don't want to seem like we're retaliating against your mother for her situation. And we'd prefer if you could take on a remote role, at least initially. Lower profile. Something in back-end architecture instead of client-facing work. I want to scream. I'm being punished for being the victim. But Patricia had warned me about this. Take it, she'd said. It's a step toward normalcy, and it shows a court that you're functioning despite the harm done to you. Don't fight them on it. Not yet. So I agree to the remote position. It's a demotion in everything but title, a subtle way of sidelining me without officially sidelining me. But it's income. It's structure. It's something. The harder problem is dealing with the fallout in my family. I haven't been to my parents' house since the day my mother made her threat. My father has texted twice, vague and uncomfortable messages that essentially amount to, can't you two just work this out? He's not stupid, he understands what happened, but he's also been married to my mother for 34 years, and he's chosen his peace over his principles. I don't know how to forgive that yet. Maybe I never will. But it's my extended family that's become the real minefield. My Aunt Karen calls on a Tuesday evening, and I make the mistake of answering because I didn't recognize the number on the first ring. Oh, honey, she says, and I immediately regret everything. I've been so worried about you. Hello, Aunt Karen, I say carefully. I want you to know that I've been talking to your mother, and she's devastated. Absolutely devastated. She didn't mean for things to go this far. She was just trying to protect the family from. She was trying to extort $50,000 from me, I say, my voice flat. And when I refused, she committed multiple felonies to punish me for it. Well, she was desperate. You know how she gets with the gambling. I think if you just sat down with her, explained that you understand her struggles. I don't, I interrupt. I don't understand. And I'm not interested in sitting down with her. I'm interested in pressing charges. There's a long silence. I can hear her breathing, the shift in her tone before she even speaks again. You're going to destroy her, Aunt Karen says quietly. Do you understand that? Your mother will go to prison. My mother committed crimes, I say. Against me. Serious crimes. She's still your mother. I hang up. I don't see the point in continuing the conversation, and Sarah had warned me about this too. Don't engage with family members trying to convince you to drop charges, she'd said. It's manipulation. Document every call, every message, but don't engage. I document the call. The messages start coming more frequently after that. My cousin Jennifer, who apparently feels emboldened after Aunt Karen's attempt, sends me a long text about family honor and how my mother raised me, and surely that counts for something. My uncle Michael, always the peacemaker, suggests that we could solve this quietly without involving the courts. My brother Jeremy, bless him, tells them all to fuck off in the group chat and offers to let me stay with him if I need to get away. But the worst part comes on a Thursday afternoon. I'm at Jeremy's apartment, ostensibly just visiting, but actually hiding because my anxiety has been through the roof. My therapist, not Dr. Morrison, since that situation is complicated and involves his own legal considerations, but a new therapist I found through a victim advocacy service, had suggested I find safe spaces away from my home while the investigation is ongoing. Jeremy's place has become one of them. My phone rings. It's a number I don't recognize, but it has my area code. Don't answer it, Jeremy says. It's probably. But I already have. Hello, is this my name? A woman's voice, professional and clipped. Yes, I say, and Jeremy immediately starts waving his hands at me to hang up. Who is this? This is Dr. Melinda Walsh from Atlantic County Mental Health Services. I'm calling because we received a report regarding your safety and the safety of others. The reporter expressed significant concerns about your mental stability. We'd like to schedule an evaluation. My blood goes cold. Who reported me? I ask. I'm not able to disclose that information. But the report indicated that you've been making threats against family members and that you may be experiencing a mental health crisis. Are you currently safe? Are you having any thoughts of harming yourself or others? No, I say. I'm not. And I know who reported me. My mother. There's a pause on the other end of the line. The report was submitted anonymously through our intake line, Dr. Walsh says carefully. But yes, it's possible. Regardless, we still need to conduct an evaluation. For your own safety and the safety of those around you. Jeremy is gesturing frantically now, pointing to his phone. He's already texting Sarah, I realize. I understand, I say, working to keep my voice steady. But I'm currently working with a licensed therapist and a victim advocate. I'd be happy to have my therapist contact you to discuss my mental state. That would be helpful, Dr. Walsh says. What's your therapist's name? I give her the information. We set up an appointment for an evaluation anyway, just a formality, she assures me, but we both know it's not. It's another move on a chessboard I didn't know I was playing. After I hang up, I sit down hard on Jeremy's couch. She's filing a mental health report on you, Jeremy says. It's not a question. Yeah. Can she do that? Apparently, I say. That's insane. Sarah needs to know about this. This is harassment. But what it really is, I realize, is escalation. My mother is losing her grip on the narrative, so she's trying a different angle. If she can convince people that I'm unstable, that I'm the one making false accusations, that I'm the dangerous one in this situation. It's brilliant, in a horrible way. And it means this isn't over. Not by a long shot. Hashtag chunk 5. Sarah's reaction when Jeremy tells her about the mental health evaluation is immediate and controlled fury. She's trying to poison the well, Sarah says, sitting across from me at Jeremy's kitchen table the next morning. She's brought coffee and a thick folder of documents. If she can establish that you're mentally unstable, it creates reasonable doubt about your credibility. It also gives her a sympathetic narrative, troubled child making false accusations against desperate mother. It's a classic defense strategy. Can she actually succeed with that? I ask. I mean, I'm not unstable. One evaluation will show that. One evaluation will help, Sarah corrects. But if she can get multiple people on record expressing concern about your mental state, your father, other family members, co-workers, suddenly there's a pattern. Suddenly people start wondering if maybe you're vindictive, if maybe you're exaggerating things, if maybe your memories of the abuse are distorted. She takes a sip of coffee. The best part of her strategy, from her perspective, is that filing a fake mental health report is extremely difficult to prosecute. She can claim she was genuinely concerned. She's your mother. Of course she'd report something like that out of love, right? Jeremy makes a noise of disgust from where he's leaning against the counter. What do I do? I ask. You document everything, Sarah says. You get that evaluation done. Your new therapist will likely write a report saying you're mentally stable and not a danger to yourself or others. You continue taking the remote job at your company. You show the world, and more importantly, the court, that you're functional, responsible, and coherent despite what's happened to you. And you don't engage with your family. They keep calling, I say. And texting. My father sent me a message at 2 in the morning asking if we could talk. Block them, Sarah says flatly. I know that sounds harsh, but you need to protect your mental health. And legally, it creates a clear boundary. If they continue trying to contact you after you've blocked them, it strengthens a potential harassment case. I spend the rest of the day blocking numbers. My father's. Aunt Karen's. Jennifer's. Uncle Michael's. Each one feels like a small severance, a cutting away of something I thought was permanent. By evening, I've isolated myself from nearly everyone related to my mother. Jeremy is still there. My new therapist, Dr. Patel, responds to my email immediately and agrees to contact Dr. Walsh. My employment lawyer sends a follow-up message saying she's looking into whether the mental health report constitutes defamation. But the mental health evaluation itself happens 3 days later, and it goes exactly as expected. Dr. Walsh is professional and thorough. She asks me about my childhood, my current support system, my coping mechanisms. She asks about substance abuse, I say no. About suicidal ideation, I say no. About violent thoughts, I say no. She has me take a psychological assessment, some kind of computerized test that evaluates cognitive function and emotional regulation. By the end of the 2-hour appointment, I can see the moment her perspective shifts. I'm not a threat to myself or anyone else. I'm someone who survived trauma and is managing it reasonably well under extraordinary circumstances. I'll be sending a report to your therapist, she tells me as I'm leaving. Based on my evaluation, you are mentally stable and not at risk. There's no clinical indication of any mental health crisis. It's a small victory, but it feels enormous. The problem is that even small victories don't stop the momentum my mother has created. On Friday, Derek calls me again. This time his tone is different, apologetic but firm. We've had some concerns raised, he says. By your mother, actually. She's called twice expressing worry about your mental stability and whether it's appropriate for you to be working in a role that, even remotely, has any security implications. I close my eyes. What did you tell her? We told her we couldn't discuss your employment status with her, obviously, Derek says. But it's created a situation where we need to be careful. Your security clearance for back-end work is under review. It's probably going to be suspended pending the outcome of your case. So she's getting what she wanted, I say. I'm suspended again, just more quietly this time. It's temporary, Derek says, and he actually sounds genuinely sorry. Once this is resolved, we can. Don't, I say. I don't have the energy to hear corporate reassurances that mean nothing. Just let me know what the status is. I hang up and sit in the darkness of the home office Jeremy's let me use, watching the rain streak down the window. It's been 4 weeks since my mother made her threat. 4 weeks of lawyers and evaluations and being systematically dismantled from multiple angles simultaneously. My job is in limbo. My family is fractured. My engagement is over. The only things I have left are my brother, my lawyers, and the evidence of my mother's crimes. It should be enough. By every logical measure, it is enough. The recordings she made of my therapy sessions are illegal. The extortion attempt is documented. The edited videos she sent to my boss and fiancé are provably false. The mental health report she filed is malicious and demonstrably incorrect. But somehow, it still doesn't feel like enough. It feels like she's winning. Jeremy finds me staring at the rain around 8 in the evening. He sets down a beer next to me without asking if I want one. Sarah called, he says. The prosecutor's office is moving forward with charges. Illegal recording, extortion, defamation. They're confident about the first two. The third one is trickier legally, but they're going to try. That's good, I say, but the words feel hollow. You don't sound like it's good. It is. I turn to look at him. She's my mother, Jeremy. And I'm about to send her to prison. Even knowing everything she's done, even knowing that she deserves it, I can feel people looking at me like I'm the monster here. Like I'm the unforgiving one. Like I should just let it go for the sake of family. Jeremy sits down beside me. You know what I think? I think she made her choices. Every single one. The gambling. The recordings. The extortion. The fake mental health report. The calls to your workplace. She did all of that. And now she has to live with the consequences. It doesn't feel like consequences yet, I say. It feels like I'm just getting hit from new angles every day. Because you are, Jeremy says. But that's going to change. You've got lawyers. You've got documentation. You've got the truth. And most importantly, you have people who actually believe you and support you. That's not nothing. He's right. I know he's right. But knowing that doesn't make the next day any easier when the final straw comes, when something happens that makes everything that's come before look like just the beginning of something much, much worse. #chunk6. The call comes on a Tuesday morning while I'm trying to focus on a coding project that doesn't really matter anymore. It's Sarah, but her voice is different, tighter, sharper, like she's delivering news that tastes bad in her mouth. We need to meet, she says. In person. Today if possible. What happened? I ask, already knowing something has. Nothing good ever announces itself through Sarah's tone. Your mother's filed a countersuit, Sarah says. And she's brought in a different attorney. Someone with a lot of resources behind her. 2 hours later, I'm sitting in Sarah's office again, the same uncomfortable chair, the same view of downtown traffic below. But this time there's a second attorney with Sarah, a woman named Patricia Chen who specializes in civil litigation. Patricia looks tired in a way that suggests she's been reading documents for hours straight. Your mother's claiming emotional distress, defamation against her character, and violation of her privacy, Patricia says without preamble. She's suing for $200,000 in damages. I actually laugh, a short, bitter sound. She's the one who. I know, Patricia interrupts, not unkindly. But she's arguing that your engagement ending, her reputation in the community, and the mental health evaluation that contradicted her report have caused her significant emotional and financial harm. That's insane, I say. It's a strategy, Sarah corrects. And it's not a bad one, frankly, from a defensive standpoint. She's trying to shift the narrative. Instead of being the villain in this story, she's the victim of a vengeful adult child spreading lies. But there are recordings, I say. There are logs of her extortion attempt. There are the edited videos. Which she claims she sent out of genuine concern about your mental stability, Patricia says, and I can hear the frustration underneath her professional tone. Her new attorney is arguing that the recordings of your therapy sessions were made in a misguided attempt to document concerning behavior for a future family intervention. The extortion framing is much harder for her to argue away, but the defamation claim is robust enough that it might complicate the criminal case. How does that complicate anything? Jeremy asks from beside me. He's been mostly quiet, but his hands are clenched into fists. If she wins the civil case, Patricia says, or even if it goes to settlement, it creates a narrative that your mother was acting out of concern, not malice. It humanizes her. And in the criminal case, the judge and potentially a jury will have heard from her legal team that she's the real victim here. It's not fair, but it's effective. I feel something shift in my chest, not quite panic, but close. So what do? We defend vigorously, Sarah says. We counterclaim for harassment and intentional infliction of emotional distress. And we prepare for the possibility of a longer legal battle than we initially anticipated. How much longer? I ask. Could be a year, Patricia says. Could be longer. Depends on how much your mother's willing to spend on this. The question hangs there, unspoken but obvious. Does she have money? The answer is yes. She has the house, savings, and apparently now an attorney willing to take her case, which means either she's got a retainer or someone's backing her financially. Do you think my father's involved in this? I ask. Sarah and Patricia exchange a glance. We don't have evidence that he is, Sarah says carefully. But given that he hasn't returned any of your communications and that your mother seems to have significantly more legal resources than she should have as a homemaker with gambling debts. He's probably helping her, Jeremy finishes. I stand up and walk to the window, looking out at the city below. People down there going about their lives, making normal decisions, dealing with normal problems. There's something else, Patricia says quietly. You should know about this. I turn back to face her. Your mother's attorney has been in contact with the prosecutor's office, Patricia says. They're requesting that the criminal charges be dropped in exchange for a civil settlement and a mutual non-disparagement agreement. Absolutely not, I say immediately. That's what we told them, Sarah says. But the prosecutor might be interested. They have limited resources, and if your mother's attorney can frame this as a family dispute that's being resolved civilly, it becomes less of a priority. She committed crimes, I say, and I can hear my voice rising. She recorded someone without consent. She tried to extort money. She filed a false mental health report. These aren't civil matters. These are crimes. They are, Patricia agrees. But the prosecutor's office is political. If they can resolve this quietly without going to trial, it frees up resources for other cases. And frankly, they might be worried about how a jury would perceive the case once your mother's attorney starts painting her as a concerned mother driven to desperation. Jeremy stands up and comes to stand next to me. What are the odds that the prosecutor backs down? Given the pressure. Patricia says. I'd say 40 to 50%. They might negotiate her down to a lesser charge in exchange for a guilty plea. Illegal recording is more defensible in court than the extortion or defamation claims, so that might be where they focus. I sit back down heavily. So even if we win the criminal case, we're still fighting the civil suit. And even if we win that, she walks away having turned herself into a victim. Not necessarily, Sarah says. If we can show a pattern of behavior, if we can get testimony from your therapist about the impact of the recordings, if we can demonstrate financial harm from her actions, we have a strong case for emotional distress and harassment. We can also countersue for the cost of defending against her civil suit, which means if we win, she's paying our legal fees. How much money are we talking about? I ask. Depends on how long this goes, Patricia says. Your employment case is separate, but combined with the criminal defense and this civil litigation, best case scenario, maybe $30,000 to $40,000 if everything resolves quickly. Worst case, we're looking at 6 figures. I close my eyes. A month ago, I had a job, an engagement, and a family. Now I have debt and lawyers and a mother suing me for emotional distress while the prosecutor considers dropping charges. There's one more thing, Sarah says, and her tone suggests she's saved the worst for last. I look at her expectantly. Your mother's attorney has been reaching out to your extended family, Sarah says. They've sent them copies of some of the civil complaint. Not the whole thing, just the parts that make your mother look sympathetic. We've already had one family member reach out to us expressing concern about your vendetta. Let me guess, I say. Aunt Karen. Actually, it was your father, Sarah says quietly. The room goes silent except for the sound of traffic from the street below. Chunk 7. The words don't land immediately. It takes a few seconds for my brain to process them, like they're coming through water. Your father. My father. The man who hasn't answered my calls in 3 weeks. The man who, last time we spoke, said he didn't want to be involved in family drama. My father. I repeat stupidly. His exact words were that he was deeply concerned about your mental state and that your mother has been devastated by your accusations, Sarah says, reading from her notes. He called our office yesterday afternoon. Wanted to know if there was any way to resolve this before it destroys the family completely. Jeremy's hand finds mine, squeezing hard. I can feel him tense beside me, ready to explode into anger on my behalf, but I'm oddly numb. Of course. Of course my father would do this. He's been enabling my mother's behavior for 30 years, why would now be any different? What did you tell him? I ask. That you're not interested in settlement discussions, and that he should direct any communications through our office, Sarah says. But he's clearly been brought into the fold. Your mother's attorney wouldn't be having him contact us otherwise. Is he helping her financially? Jeremy asks the question I can't quite form. We don't know yet, Patricia says. But the fact that he's now actively involved suggests either she convinced him to help, or he was never as neutral as he pretended to be, I finish. I stand up again because sitting still is making my skin crawl. I pace to the other side of Sarah's office, then back again. My therapist, my previous therapist, before Mom destroyed that trust, used to say that betrayal has layers. First there's the initial shock. Then comes the anger. But underneath both of those is a deeper pain that comes from realizing someone you thought you could count on was never really there at all. I need to talk to him, I say. I strongly advise against that, Sarah says immediately. Any communication you have with him right now can be used against you. Anything you say can be twisted, documented, presented as evidence of emotional instability or vindictiveness. So what, I just let him believe whatever lies my mother's feeding him. I just let him think I'm some kind of vindictive psychopath trying to destroy the family. Yes, Patricia says bluntly. Because the alternative is giving his attorney more ammunition. Right now, your father is a witness and potentially a source of financial support for your mother's legal team. The worst thing you can do is give them recorded evidence of you being upset about it. This is insane, Jeremy says, and his voice has that particular quality of someone trying very hard not to lose his temper. He's her father. He should be asking his side of the story. He should be a lot of things, I interrupt quietly. But he's not. I sit back down, and the weight of it settles on me like something physical. My mother didn't just attack me. She attacked my career, my relationship, and now she's systematically dismantling my family structure, position by position. And she's using my father to do it, the one person who could have stood up to her, who could have said, this isn't okay, but instead is helping her build a case against me. There's more, Sarah says, and I almost laugh because of course there is. There's always more. How much more? I ask. Your mother's attorney has been in contact with your former employer, Sarah continues. They're offering to settle your suspension if you agree to resign voluntarily and sign an NDA regarding the circumstances of your employment termination. That's illegal, Jeremy says. That's clearly retaliation for. It's a gray area, Patricia says. Your employer can argue that they're offering a settlement in good faith, that a resignation protects both parties from further litigation. The NDA would prevent you from discussing the circumstances, which technically protects them as well. It protects them from liability for suspending me based on lies, I say. If I sign that, I can't tell anyone what happened. I can't tell future employers why I left. I look like I voluntarily quit after getting suspended, which looks exactly like what someone would do if they actually had the mental health issues my mother claimed. Correct, Patricia says. It's a trap designed to discredit you further whether you take it or refuse it. I put my head in my hands. A week ago, I had 3 separate legal problems. Now I have approximately 8, and they're all connected by a network of lies and implications that my mother's apparently very competent new attorney is weaving into something that looks almost reasonable if you don't look too closely. Is she winning? I ask without looking up. Be honest. Is my mother actually winning this? There's a long silence. Long enough that I don't need the answer. The narrative is shifting, Patricia finally says. If I were on the other side, I'd be pleased with the progress. You had the advantage initially, you had documentation, you had the recordings as evidence of her crimes, you had a clear victim narrative. But now she's reframed herself as a mother trying to help, your father is backing her story, and the prosecutor is losing interest in pursuing charges. Every new development is muddying the waters. How do we unmuddy them? I ask. We fight harder, Sarah says. We depose your father, we get discovery from your mother's attorney, we take her deposition and let her incriminate herself on the record. We investigate who's actually funding her legal team. We document the impact this is having on your mental health, your career prospects, your life. We make it hurt. Make it hurt for her, you mean, Jeremy says. Make it cost, Patricia corrects. In money, in time, in the burden of litigation. Right now, she thinks she's winning. We need to make her understand that this is going to be expensive and exhausting and that she's not going to come out of this ahead. And if that doesn't work? I ask. Nobody answers. Nobody needs to. We all know that some people will burn everything down just to prove you wrong, and my mother has already demonstrated that she's willing to destroy her relationship with her only child for $50,000 in gambling debts. I'm not sure there's a line for her anymore. We keep fighting, Sarah says finally. Because the alternative is giving up, and giving up means she wins. Completely. I nod slowly, and I can feel something hardening in my chest, not strength exactly, but something harder than hope. Something closer to grim determination. The real battle, I realize, is only just beginning. Chunk 8. 3 months later, I'm sitting in a courthouse hallway wearing a suit that costs more than my first car, waiting to testify against my mother. The irony isn't lost on me. The deposition was brutal. My mother's attorney tried every trick in the book, suggesting my therapist had planted false memories, implying I'd fabricated the blackmail for attention, arguing that the recordings were consensually obtained family documentation. But Sarah was relentless. She played the actual recordings. She presented the forensic analysis showing the edits in the video clips sent to my boss and Jamie. She brought in the phone records documenting the extortion attempt, the text messages, the voicemails. And then she brought in the bank records. Turns out, my father wasn't just passively supporting my mother. He'd been actively funding her legal defense, nearly $80,000 in transfers over 3 months. But more importantly, those records also showed something else. My mother had been systematically emptying their joint accounts for years. Gambling losses that my father apparently didn't know about, or worse, knew about and enabled. When Sarah presented those documents, my mother actually cried. Not the performance tears she'd perfected over decades, but something that looked almost real. My father, sitting beside her in the courtroom gallery, went pale. That's when I realized something crucial. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about my father finally seeing what everyone else could see. The evidence didn't just prove my mother's crimes against me, it proved her crimes against him too. You're up, Jeremy says, touching my shoulder. He's been my anchor through all of this. After the initial shock of the edited videos wore off, he realized the truth pretty quickly. He'd watched me for years struggle with anxiety about my mother, but he'd never seen me fabricate anything. He'd met with my actual therapist, with my permission, reviewed the original unedited recordings, and made his own decision. He stood by me when my employer decided to quietly settle my case. They were more concerned about the public relations nightmare of being complicit in extortion than they were about whatever my mother had told them. I got my job back. I got a promotion, actually, once the new VP realized that my mental health issues were actually discovering that my mother is a criminal. Jamie was different. He needed more time, and I had to respect that. But last month, he reached out. He'd done his own research, talked to people who knew me, and came to terms with the fact that he'd been manipulated. We're not getting back together, that ship sailed when he believed her videos over me, but we're working toward a place where we can at least be civil. I stand up and walk into the courtroom. The prosecutor is a woman in her 50s named Morrison, and she spent the last few weeks building what she calls an airtight case. The criminal charges are straightforward: illegal recording, extortion, attempted blackmail. But what makes the case exceptional is the systematic documentation of everything, the pattern of behavior, the escalation, the lack of remorse. I testify about the blackmail conversation. I play the unedited therapy recordings. I describe the panic of watching edited clips circulate, of losing my job, of having my engagement implode. I talk about what it felt like to realize that my father was actively helping her continue the assault. My mother's attorney tries to paint me as vindictive, as someone manufacturing evidence, as a troubled person with a history of mental health struggles. But here's the thing, I've been honest about my anxiety. I've documented my therapy. I have text messages from before all of this happened, messages where I ask for help, where I express my concerns about her behavior. The narrative doesn't shift this time. The evidence is too concrete. When it's over, the judge sets sentencing for a month out. She recommends the prosecution take the extortion charges seriously and suggests that my mother's gambling addiction might warrant court-ordered treatment. My mother doesn't look at me as we file out of the courtroom. She looks at my father, and the expression on his face is something I've never seen before: disillusionment. The civil suit wraps up 2 weeks later with a settlement. My mother will pay for the damage to my career and reputation, plus legal fees. It's not a fortune, she doesn't have a fortune, which is why she needed that $50,000 in the first place, but it's enough to feel like validation. It's enough to feel like the system, when properly presented with evidence, actually works. The extended family dinner happens on a Saturday in October. My aunt, not Karen, who sided with my mother, reaches out and asks if I'll come. She wants to rebuild family connections and assures me that people are starting to understand the full picture. I almost don't go. Then I remember that my mother spent 30 years telling me that accountability and boundaries were selfish, and I decide to show up anyway. Aunt Sarah, a different Sarah than my lawyer, greets me at the door with an awkward hug. My cousins nod at me warily. The mood is cautious, careful, like everyone's walking on eggshells. My mother doesn't come. She's dealing with the sentencing, with mandatory counseling, with the reality of what her actions have cost her. My father is there, though. He finds me in the kitchen, where I'm pretending to be very interested in a potato salad. I owe you an apology, he says quietly. More than one, actually. I've owed you a lot of things for a long time. I set down the spoon. Yeah, you do. I believed her, he continues, because it was easier than admitting she had a problem. I pretended neutrality was the same thing as responsibility. When the evidence became undeniable, I got angry at her instead of facing the fact that I'd known, on some level, for years. I don't know what to say to that, so I don't say anything. I want to try to be a better father, he says. I don't know if you want that. I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. But I'm going to try. I look at him, really look at him, and I see someone who's been forced to confront uncomfortable truths about himself. Someone who's lost his marriage, his reputation, his sense of who he was. Someone who's finally understanding that enabling isn't love. Okay, I say finally. We can try. He nods, and I watch as he returns to the living room, slightly straighter than when he left. Jeremy's hand finds mine from across the kitchen counter, and he squeezes. The road ahead is still complicated. My mother's sentencing is still coming. The full extent of her financial crimes might not be known for months. The family might never fully heal. But sitting here in my aunt's kitchen, with Jeremy beside me and my father trying to do better and the evidence of my own resilience surrounding me, I realized that the real victory wasn't winning the lawsuit or the criminal case. The real victory was refusing to disappear. It was refusing to accept that I was crazy. It was holding on to the truth when everyone around me was invested in a lie. And that, I think, is something my mother can never take away.